Hi, I'm Thomas Huddleston, an international expert on citizenship and diversity, and a Saint-Gillois for the past 15 years. I live here near the City Hall. I was able to vote in the last two local elections, and I cooperated with the Brussels Region, European Commission, and the City of Saint-Gilles in the 2018 local elections to double the voter registration rate among international voters. I'm now volunteering with Vote Brussels, a campaign with the Brussels region to reach out to the international Saint-Gillois and Saint-Gilloise ahead of this October's local elections. And I want to talk to you about how our voice as international voters in Saint-Gilles matters for democracy. Did you know that there are over 300,000 international voters here in the Brussels region? We are 1/3 of the Brussels region. And you might know, but Saint-Gilles is actually Belgium's most international commune. The history of Saint-Gilles is the history of migration and diversity in Belgium. The city was famous as the starting of the Camino route for pilgrims who wanted to go from Brussels all the way down to St. James of Compostela. And so they would walk through the commune. And the establishment of the Midi station here in the 19th century brought with it so many workers from neighboring countries, and then eventually German Jewish refugees fleeing Nazis, and later workers coming from Spain, Italy, Portugal, and the rest of the world. And that is what makes Saint-Gilles what an exciting place to live. But Saint-Gilles is also one of the Belgian communes with the largest democratic deficit. In the 2018 local elections, only 49% of potential voters in Saint-Gilles actually voted, and this in a country with one of the highest voter turnout records in the world. And that's because most international voters did not get the right information in time on how to sign up and why their voice matters. And that's really essential in Saint-Gilles because here, international voters are 1/2 of all potential voters. 1/2 are non-Belgian citizens. Of those, you can see that 1/3 are mobile EU citizens, and then the rest are non-EU citizens, like myself, from other parts of the world. And even if you look among Belgian citizens, nearly 20% of the population are people who were born outside of Belgium and have become Belgian citizens through naturalization. And then almost another 15% are children who were born here in Belgium. So we, as people connected to the rest of the world, are so essential for Saint-Gilles local democracy. So who are these international voters? Well, the largest group and the most important and growing group are citizens from France, who now make up nearly 6,000 international residents in Saint-Gilles, followed by citizens of Portugal, Italy, Spain, Morocco, Romania, Poland, Germany, Greece, and Brazil. We are all Saint-Gilles. And it's important to remember this when we talk about local power, because we often think that elections are actually about the politicians. So I'm going to ask you, do you know who this man is? This is Charles Piquet, who was the former mayor of Saint-Gilles and retired halfway through his mandate, but he ran in the 2018 local elections. And do you know how many votes Charles Piquet received in 2018? He received the most votes of any politician in the 2018 local elections. 3,793 votes. Now, what percent of internationals were signed up to vote in Saint-Gilles in the 2018 local elections? 22% of internationals, one of the highest shares in the Brussels region. But if all of them had signed up to vote, do you know what percent of the vote they would have had? 48%, or 18,101 votes. So who has the power in Brussels local democracy? You do. And these statistics are the same for every commune in Brussels, regardless of political party. The fact is that the number of seats in the city council and for aldermen is calculated based on the size of the population. But the votes that you need to get as a politician depend on the size of the electorate. So if international voters don't sign up to vote here in the Brussels local elections, then it's much easier for politicians to get elected with a few hundred votes. And in the end, mayors often only have had a few thousand votes. Whereas if everyone votes, then we are going to have elections where politicians are much more responsive to the needs of ordinary people like you and me, and we're all going to get one step closer to the kind of commune that we want. And the commune is really important in Belgium because we often have this myth that all of the power in Belgium is at the top, with the federal government that we talk a lot about, and then with the communities and the regions, Dutch-speaking, French-speaking, German-speaking, Flemish, Wallonia, Brussels region, and that in the end, the 581 communes don't have a lot of power. But that is a myth, because the way that power really works in Belgium is that the communes have a lot of power, but also a lot of influence to represent the interests of their local citizens so that they're heard by the region, the community, and the federal government. And the federal, community, and regional governments are providing a lot of the policies and support that in the end are implemented at the local level by communes that make choices whether or not they want to take advantage of these other opportunities to invest in their local area. And if you don't believe me, listen to the most powerful and popular politicians in Belgium. So my next question for you is, do you recognize these two men? Again, they are Belgium's most powerful and popular politicians on the Dutch-speaking and French-speaking side. Yes, that's Bart de Wever and Paul Magnat. But now, where are they actually holding political office? Do you know what their jobs are, where they're representing the public? Well, Bart de Wever is the mayor of Antwerp, the largest city in Flanders, and Paul Magnat is the mayor of Charleroi, the largest city in Wallonia. And you regularly hear stories in the Belgian press like this one, where a well-known minister in the regional government actually leaves his post because what he prefers to do is work at the local level, where here he says you choose what's really important. And that's also what happened for our mayor in Saint-Gilles, Charles Piquet. At the end of his prestigious career as president of the Brussels region, he came back to serve as local mayor in the area that he loved the most. And that's, again, because in Belgium, we all have more power at the local level than really anywhere else in Europe. So your city hall here in Saint-Gilles manages all of these city hall services for foreigners, the population, and documents. They also are the main investors in our local cultural, sports, and social facilities. They also are investing in our daycare and school infrastructure. They are key to supporting the local economy, local businesses, local housing, including building social housing. They are in charge of most of the parking, traffic, and mobility rules. They oversee the police and assure our public security. They coordinate most of the public works, parks, public spaces. They're in charge of the trash pickup on the public trash bins that you see along the street, but also the cleaning of our streets. And they handle most of the urban planning and environmental permits. In Belgium, they even manage the welfare offices, the CPIS, that choose what kind of services they want to offer for vulnerable populations like the unemployed or the homeless or the elderly or refugees or vulnerable immigrants. So what issue is most important for you voting in the local elections this October? I would say that for me, I think that with everything that has happened over the past 2 years, I've gotten to know my neighborhood here in Saint-Gilles very well. I really know what I love about it, but I also know what it needs. And with everything going on in the world, where I come from, what I also see around the world, I really feel like Saint-Gilles is my home for myself, for my family, and I want it to feel that way for everyone who's coming here for work, for refuge, and for opportunities to have a future. So what issue is most important for you when you're going to be voting this October? Well, when you vote, we're going to be voting for the candidates for the city council. Every 6 years, we vote in the local elections, and the city council that we elect will then choose who will be the aldermen forming the majority coalition and who will be the mayor. They'll also choose who represents us in our welfare office administration, in the police management, in the representative of the commune in various associations and intercommunal groups. So to choose the city council members, you can either vote for the party list as it's arranged, or you can vote for specific candidates on one list. And that helps to rearrange the list and determine who in the end is going to get a seat on the city council. And those candidates include EU citizens who are running to become part of the city council. We have more political choices in Belgium than in most countries, and you can vote for various national parties, but also specific local parties that you'll see emerging ahead of the local elections. And you see this across all communes. You see here a map that shows you the majorities and also the mayorships in all of the communes, including in Saint-Gilles. And I give you also here what were the results in the 2018 local elections that led to our current city council. And you see there both national parties, but also specific local parties for Saint-Gilles. You will also see that we, as the international community, are really contributing to reshaping local politics here in Saint-Gilles. In the last 2018 election, we actually had 25 EU citizen candidates. They represented 16% of all candidates, and they were running across the political spectrum. 4 of them actually were elected, 11%, which is a good turnout. So again, you're also going to see in the local elections EU citizen candidates, but also non-EU citizen candidates who have become Belgian citizens. And a lot could change in these elections. They're going to be very close here in Brussels, the polls suggest, and that could mean major changes here in Saint-Gilles. So if you want to figure out which party resonates with you, corresponds to the issues that you care about, you can take electoral tests that have been provided by the RTBF, but also Le Soir, and they will give you specific answers on the different political parties and their priorities for Brussels in general. And this gives you a good idea of which parties are most similar to you. You'll get a lot more information about the parties and the candidates in Saint-Gilles closer to the local elections this summer and autumn. But for you to do this, the key is you've got to sign up to vote. And signing up and voting is probably one of the easiest things you're going to do here as an international in Belgium. All registered EU adults can vote. So as long as you're 18 by election day, October 13, and you have finished the residence registration process, you're a resident of Saint-Gilles, or you have a special ID card because you work for one of the international organizations, that's all you need to do. If you are a non-EU citizen, then you have to have lived in Belgium with a residence permit for 5 years or more. So since the 31st of July, 2019. But in order to sign up, you have to go and sign up by the 31st of July, 2024, which is 3 months before the election. So it's really soon. You don't have a lot of time. You have to sign up as a voter. Now, if you've got some questions, there are great frequently asked questions that are provided by the Brussels region in French and Dutch, as well as by its Brussels Commissioner for Europe in English. But here's how I would answer them very quickly. Well, how do I go and sign up? You sign up online through the government portal, very simple with the electronic card reader, or It's Me. Or you can print out, sign, and mail or drop off the form at the Saint-Gilles City Hall by the 31st of July. No need to wait in a queue or make an appointment or bring any extra documents. It's the easiest thing that you'll do in Belgium. Well, what do I do if I only can register as a resident or sign up to vote after the 31st of July? Well, you're not going to be signed up to vote for this October's local election, but for the future local elections. Well, what if I've signed up to vote for the EU elections here in Belgium? Is that the same as the local elections in Saint-Gilles? No, because you, as an EU citizen, actually have the choice of what country's list you're going to vote for in the EU election. And that has nothing to do with whether or not you vote at the local level. So it's your choice. You've got to sign up separately for the local elections. What if I've signed up to vote already in the local elections in Belgium, either here in Saint-Gilles or in another commune where I was living? Do I need to re-register? No. Once you've signed up, then you'll stay signed up, even if you move from one commune to another, and you can check your status by going on the government's voter registration portal. Well, am I obliged to vote forever in Belgium? Again, no. If you move out of Belgium, well, then you're going to be automatically deregistered as an international voter in Belgium. And as an international voter, you actually have the right to deregister whenever you want, 3 months before the next local election. So that gives you plenty of time if you're no longer interested in voting here. Will signing up to vote in Belgium affect my job, my status, my taxes, my voting rights here or abroad? No, 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 no. And well, I heard voting is obligatory. Will I be sanctioned or will I be fined? There's really no reason to worry because obligatory voting is very flexible here in practice. So what that means is that you or a proxy voter just needs to go to the poll on election day and you can vote, or you can choose to leave your vote blank, or you can spoil your vote. That's your own choice. But obligatory voting is the way that Belgium guarantees universal suffrage, so that every voter is at least counted and is treated equally and is represented. And most important is that you don't actually have to go to the polls on election day if you're traveling or working or sick or have some religious or other key obligation. So many internationals are not sure if they're going to be in the country on election day, Sunday, the 13th of October, but that's no problem. You can vote by proxy with the proxy form that you give to another registered voter. Now, why is this all important to end? Because I want us to appreciate that the story of our local democracy here in Saint-Gilles, it's not just because Saint-Gilles is our second home, it's also because it's part of our contribution to the democracy of Saint-Gilles and Brussels and Belgium more generally. Belgium was one of the first countries in Europe to create a liberal constitution and to create obligatory voting and proportional representation so that all voters would be represented, not just the richest 1% of voters, but all voters from all social classes. And that helped create one of the most generous welfare states in Belgium that has guaranteed us one of the lowest levels of economic inequality in the world. But still, so many Belgians and non-Belgians have had to fight to get equal representation and citizenship. Women had to fight over 40 years for the right to vote. And Belgium was one of the last countries to give women the right to vote and start the progress on gender equality. It's also one of the last countries to give the right to vote to colonized people, to naturalized citizens, to young people. And it might surprise you that Belgium was one of the last EU countries to give the right to vote to EU citizens, which it later extended to non-EU citizens. And Saint-Gilles has been so key in making progress for inclusive democracy in Belgium. In 1890, you had 75,000 people from all across Brussels descend upon the Park of Saint-Gilles and Forêt, calling for a universal suffrage. And it was this mobilization, followed by a national strike, that finally led Belgium to be one of the first countries in the world to guarantee universal male suffrage and proportional representation. And at that protest, the participants swore that they were going to fight without ceasing and without rest until the day when, through the establishment of universal suffrage, the Belgian people will finally have a homeland for themselves. And now, over 100 years later, we are here in Saint-Gilles, where actually half of the population isn't able to vote yet. So I'm calling on all of my fellow Saint-Gillois and Saint-Gilloises to take on this oath and to fight without rest and without ceasing until the day that we can ensure that all of our international neighbors and families and friends and colleagues will join us in Brussels democracy, so that we, the people of Brussels and Saint-Gilles, will finally have a home, a capital for Europe, and the home of international democracy. And there have been so many great people of Saint-Gilles who have fought to bring about inclusive democracy. Paul Janssen was a leading member in the Liberal Party who fought as a member of parliament to secure this universal male suffrage. And his daughter, Marie Janson, became a local city councillor for the Socialist Party when that became possible for women. And she also fought for female suffrage and became Belgium's first senator. Her son, Paul-Henri Spaak, who you see as that little boy there with his grandfather, Paul Janssen, ended up becoming one of the founding members of the European Union, the Council of Europe, and NATO. It's not always been an easy fight here in Saint-Gilles for inclusive democracy. When Saint-Gilles became the home to workers coming from around the world after the Second World War, they did not receive the warmest welcome. Saint-Gilles did not want to even create a consultative council of immigrants in the 1970s. And in the 1980s, they opted into a Belgian law called the Goals Law that allowed communes to refuse to register more internationals if they felt like they had too many. And so in 1991, there were actually huge riots in Forêt and in Saint-Gilles by young people from diverse backgrounds who were angry that the local police didn't respect them and that their neighborhoods were not being invested in with the same kind of services and support that they deserved. And that action actually led to the first funding for integration here in the Brussels region, but also the creation of the neighborhood contracts, the contrat de quartier, the development of all of the kind of associations like the youth and women's houses, Maison des Jeunes, Maison des Femmes, that you see now all across Saint-Gilles and are part of the rich cultural and social life that we all love here. The city of Saint-Gilles has taken steps forward to become leaders on democracy in Brussels and in Europe. The Brussels Commissioner for Europe that helps to represent Brussels at the European level and get the international community involved in Brussels politics has actually been led by Saint-Gilles politicians from its beginning, Carla Lux and Alan Hutchinson. And the international community has helped to transform Brussels with their ideas, their contributions to the economy, and their culture. So you might not have known that in the 1960s, the Grand Place was actually a parking lot, like a lot of Brussels. And it was through mobilization of the international community, through the Bulletin, the English-speaking magazine at the time, that the international community organized a sit-in in the Grand Place in 1971. And as a result, the Grand Place was given back to the residents of Brussels, and we have the most beautiful square in Europe to share with everyone who comes here. That action by the international community inspired activists in 2012 who organized a sit-in picnic on the Boulevard Ansbach, and their action inspired the city and the region to create the pedestrian zone that we all now use and love. So while international citizens have helped to make the Brussels economy and culture more dynamic and cosmopolitan, it's also our role to contribute to make the Brussels democracy work for everyone. So how can you make history this October? Sign up to vote as soon as possible before the 31st of July. Again, online with the electronic card reader or It's Me at inscription.elections.fgov.be, or print, sign, mail, and drop off either the EU citizen form or the non-EU form at the commune. There will help you to fill in the form if you need that extra assistance as well. And thank you for becoming a voter and making Saint-Gilles the most international democracy in Brussels and in the world. If you've already signed up to vote, that's fantastic. You're leading the way, but your voice is not going to really count if your family, friends, your neighbors, and your colleagues also aren't signed up to vote. So share this video with anyone that you know in Saint-Gilles who is an international voter. Volunteer with us in Vote Brussels, and let's make Saint-Gilles and Brussels the most cosmopolitan democracy in the world.